when do you think the soul enters the body? Some say at conception, some say at birth, and others say sometime after that. Well, if you ask a lot of Christians today, they might answer with a shrug of their shoulders. I don't know. But what does the Bible actually teach about the origin of the soul? And more importantly, who really has control over your life? Is it chance, or the Father who sent his Son so that we could have everlasting life? Let's look deeper into this important topic. We read in Genesis chapter 2 verse 7, "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." Here we see that when God made the first man, Adam, he didn't just put him together like an assembly line worker putting together cars. No, the moment that God breathed into Adam's nostrils, the breath of life entered into him, and Adam became a living being. This teaches us that the soul is the breath of God, the divine essence that emits and makes one a living being. So we can say that the soul was there all along. Even though Adam did not yet have parents, he had a father, and his name was God. We are created directly by God and breathed upon by God and therefore belong to God. Some may say, well, maybe the soul comes later in life. But we know that every part of our body started forming during gestation. When we were in our mother's belly, at some point, cells began to multiply and develop, ultimately becoming full-grown human beings. But the reality is that our life started way before any cell division ever occurred. Our life began the moment that our soul was created by God and breathed into our body. It seems that many people today still struggle with the idea of when exactly life begins. Is it when the baby is born? Is it when the baby kicks for the first time? Is it when brain activity is detected? Or is it when the baby is viable outside the womb? Listen, these questions are valid, but they miss the bigger picture. The truth is that we are too focused on the physical aspect of life and have forgotten the spiritual aspect. If we want to really understand when life begins, we need to consider the spiritual side of things and where the soul fits in. So let's go back to the scriptures and see what they teach us. Psalm chapter 139, verses 30-16. "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and my soul knows them right well. You saw me before I was born, and in your book you wrote down the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. For my frame was formed in secret and intricately woven in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows them right well." Notice here how David says that God formed his inward parts and knitted him together in his mother's womb. This means that he was fully aware of the fact that he existed as a person before he was physically born. He also says that God saw him before he was born, which shows that God knew him and loved him before he existed physically. David realized that he was more than just a collection of cells, but that he was a unique individual with a soul that God had already created and placed inside his mother's womb. What about Jeremiah, chapter 1, verses 4-5? "Now, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you as a prophet to the nations, and as a king over Israel. Then I said, Ah, Lord God, I do not know how to speak, for I am only a child." So, in this passage, God spoke to Jeremiah before he was born. In fact, God knew Jeremiah before he was born. This shows us that God doesn't just create the body at the time of birth, but that the soul is created before birth. And because God knows and speaks to Jeremiah while he's still in the womb, we can be sure that he already has a soul at that point. In the Bible, the word soul refers to the immaterial, immortal essence of a person that is the source of their thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and will. It is what makes us human and sets us apart from other living creatures. The soul is not something that is generated or produced in any physical or biological process, but it is directly created and given by God. It is the divine spark within us that connects us to God and gives us the ability to relate to Him. Let's examine another important passage. Luke chapter 1, verse 41. "And it came to pass that when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary, the babe leaped in her womb for joy." Here, when Mary greets her cousin Elizabeth, the unborn John the Baptist, who is also known as Elijah, leaps for joy in his mother's womb. This is significant because it shows that John the Baptist was alive and responsive to what was going on around him. He wasn't just a clump of cells or a fetus, but was a living human being with a beating heart and a functioning nervous system. In fact, the Greek word used here for leaped is the same word that is used for when someone voluntarily jumps up and down excitedly. So John was consciously choosing to rejoice in anticipation of the Messiah's birth. This event clearly demonstrates that life, and therefore the soul, enters the body at conception. So let's summarize this so far. First, the soul is the breath of God. Second, our soul was created by God before our physical creation. Third, the soul exists in the womb. Fourth, the soul is known by God before it is physically born. Fifth, the soul is alive. And sixth, the soul enters at conception, not at birth. Yes, we were physically carried in our mother's wombs for 9 months, but that was just the time it took for our bodies to grow and develop so that we could live on earth. We already had a soul, and it was already there. In fact, Our soul's journey started long before we were ever born, in eternity past, and it will continue long after our physical bodies die. Our soul is eternal. It never changes, and it is incapable of being destroyed. It was created by God, and one day it will return to God. Think of it this way. We are like a beautiful painting. The artist is God, and the canvas is our soul. At conception, God starts painting our soul, giving it all the colors and details that make it unique. Then he puts his signature on the painting. That signature is our destiny to spend eternity with God in heaven. But there's more to the painting. God didn't just paint the soul. He also painted our bodies. Our physical bodies are like another canvas. God painted our bodies with all the colors and details that make each of us unique. But he didn't sign that canvas yet, because God gave us free will, and our choices determine whether we will have our name written in the book of life. Now, you may be thinking, who am I? You may feel like just a collection of cells, or a tiny baby in a womb, but remember, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are more than just a physical being. You have a soul that God has created and has plans for. Don't forget that your soul is eternal and destined to spend eternity with God. So hold on to that truth and live your life in a way that honors God. So why did God send your soul into a frail human body to live out its purposeful journey of choice, growth, and relationship with God? Why didn't God just create a perfect world where everything would be easy and there would be no suffering or pain? Well, the simple answer is this. God made our world that way so that we could choose to follow him. Think about it this way. If everything was perfect, how could we truly know what it meant to trust God? We wouldn't be able to know what it meant to choose God over sin, to choose faith over doubt, or to choose love over hate. These are all choices that we have to make in our life, and it is through these choices that we grow spiritually and become more like Christ. Our world is filled with challenges, and yes, there is suffering and pain, but there is also beauty, joy, and love. God gave us free will so that we could choose to love him because love requires choice. And God wanted us to choose him freely. Do you realize how special you are? Your soul is eternal and was created by God himself. It is priceless and has a destiny to spend eternity in heaven. You are not just a physical being. You are a spiritual being with a soul that can connect to God himself. So never forget that you are loved by God and have a bright future ahead of you. Keep your eyes fixed on God and trust in his plan for your life. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, God bless you.